A woman in simple attire stood just outside the sleek glass doors of Bellera Lux, her posture straight, despite the sting of humiliation. Inside, murmurs echoed as the boutique manager returned to laughter and self-congratulation. Moments earlier, Julia Bennett had been escorted out not for theft or disruption, but for wearing joggers instead of designer heels. She walked away slowly, her dignity intact, while passers-by glanced curiously at the unfolding scene. Less than an hour later, a black sedan rolled to a stop at the curb. The man who stepped out wasn't just her husband, he was the one writing the rules. The morning sun stretched warmly across Rodeo Drive, casting a golden shimmer over luxury storefronts and palm-lined sidewalks. Among the early shoppers, Julia Bennett moved with quiet intention. At 47, she carried herself with the ease of someone unbothered by surface-level judgment. Her blonde hair was tied in a loose knot, and her outfit, soft gray joggers, a white t-shirt and clean sneakers, spoke more to practicality than pretense. Despite being married to a man whose name carried weight in global finance, she never saw the need to flaunt it. Today held meaning beyond casual shopping. Her husband's birthday was days away, and she had spent weeks researching the perfect gift. A rare vintage watch housed at Bellera Lux had caught her attention, a timepiece known as much for its history as its craftsmanship. She wanted it to be a surprise, something thoughtful and quietly elegant like him. She checked her watch. It was 10:30 a.m., plenty of time before their noon lunch reservation nearby. As she approached the boutique's gleaming entrance, crystal chandeliers sparkled behind the windows and carefully dressed staff floated between curated displays. With a steady breath, Julia stepped inside, unaware that this simple act would unravel far more than she expected. The cool air of Bellera Lux met her skin like a wall of curated exclusivity. A delicate chime marked her entrance, yet none of the staff glanced up. Julia moved toward a display case featuring vintage watches, her eyes locking onto the one she had researched, the rare 1963 Langford chronograph nestled on velvet beneath a halo of light. It was precisely as she had imagined. Eventually, a young associate approached her tailored black dress, as precise as her clipped movements. Her eyes scanned Julia from head to toe, not with curiosity, but calculation. Though her words were professionally delivered, her tone betrayed an undercurrent of doubt laced with condescension. When Julia pointed to the watch, the woman hesitated, suggesting other options, less exclusive, less expensive, before reluctantly retrieving a key. As the timepiece was removed with excessive care and placed inches beyond reach, Julia remained composed. She examined it with genuine admiration, but the associate remained distant, her posture stiff, as if guarding against assumed misuse. From across the boutique, the manager took notice, his expression sharpening. For Julia, the shift was subtle but familiar. She had seen it before, the moment someone decided who she was based solely on what she wore. The manager approached with deliberate steps, his designer shoes clicking softly against the marble floor. Elijah Crane was known for his ability to profile clients within seconds, and in his eyes, Julia didn't fit the mold. Her casual clothing, her quiet demeanor, none of it aligned with the clientele he believed worthy of Bellera Lux's rarities. He inserted himself into the interaction, addressing the associate with feigned politeness, but never once looking away from Julia. What followed was a sequence she recognized all too well. Subtle redirection, vague policy explanations, and a demand for financial verification. Terms like high-value item protocol and platinum verification were delivered with rehearsed civility, but their meaning was unmistakable. Each sentence added a layer to the growing wall between her and the purchase she intended to make. As other customers glanced over, curiosity replacing casual browsing, the mood shifted from quiet dismissal to something openly accusatory. Elijah's posture tightened, his patience thinning as Julia refused to back down. Then, with finality, he motioned toward the door, insisting she leave. A gesture sharp, practiced not forceful enough to be assault, but heavy with insult, sent Julia into the sunlight, no longer a guest, but a woman publicly rejected for daring not to dress the part. The midday heat shimmered off the pavement as a black luxury sedan pulled to the curb in front of Bellera Lux. Andrew Bennett stepped out, adjusting his navy blue tie with practiced ease. Years of high-stakes negotiations had shaped his every movement, measured, composed, and deliberate. He glanced around, expecting to see Julia waiting near the boutique. Instead, he saw only unfamiliar faces and a distant figure walking away down the block. As he approached the entrance, a woman stylishly dressed but visibly uncomfortable hesitated before speaking to him. Her quiet words shifted his entire posture. Without a word, he glanced toward the boutique's glass windows where the manager and staff now moved with unbothered ease. Something in their body language, too smug, too self-satisfied, made everything clear. He didn't pull out his phone. He didn't summon his assistant or check the time. Instead, he waited. When Julia reappeared moments later, her pace slowed at the sight of him. Their eyes met across the sidewalk, and in that brief silence, understanding passed between them. Julia reached him just before he stepped inside. Her hand found his arm, a gentle barrier, but the decision had already been made. The rules of engagement were about to change. The boutique's interior quieted the moment Andrew stepped through the door. His presence disrupted the casual elegance that Bellera Lux so carefully curated. Elijah Crane, still recounting the earlier encounter to a pair of amused staff, turned with a polished smile, one that faltered the moment he recognized the man now standing before him. Andrew moved with quiet authority, his gaze scanning the room before settling on the vintage watch still resting on the velvet pad. Elijah attempted composure, but the color in his face betrayed a rising panic. Recognition spread across the sales floor like wildfire. Whispers followed as employees connected the dots. Julia Bennett, dismissed minutes earlier, was married to the very man whose name was known throughout luxury investment circles. Andrew addressed the situation with cold precision. His words measured and final, cut through the pretense like a scalpel. The staff stood frozen, watching as Elijah's confidence crumbled beneath the weight of accountability. There was no yelling, no threats, just facts laid bare. He requested an apology not out of vengeance but principle. And when Elijah offered it, trembling and reluctant, Andrew made it clear this wasn't merely about dignity, it was about reminding an industry what respect truly looks like. Elijah stood motionless as Andrew revealed the final detail, the recent acquisition that placed Bellera Lux under his firm's control. The revelation landed with quiet force, shifting the atmosphere from discomfort to reckoning. Rather than demand termination, Andrew announced a new initiative: comprehensive training on unconscious bias and equitable customer care. Julia would oversee its development. Though surprised, she understood his intent. This wasn't about public humiliation, but systemic correction. The gesture reframed the moment, turning insult into impact. What began as exclusion was now an opportunity for accountability, and the lesson would ripple far beyond the boutique's polished floors. The transaction was completed in silence, the same hands that had once refused to assist, now wrapping the vintage timepiece with reverent care. Julia accepted the package with grace, her composure intact, as eyes followed her every move. As she and Andrew exited Bellera Lux, quiet murmurs followed, some in awe, others in shame. The story would travel quickly, a whispered warning cloaked as gossip along Rodeo Drive. Over lunch, the tension began to fade. Julia, though still affected, found comfort in the way Andrew's presence had rebalanced the scales. Not with anger, but with clarity. In the end, it wasn't status or wealth that had changed the day's outcome. It was character. Far beyond luxury storefronts and designer labels, a truth stood: resilient dignity requires no permission. Respect once withheld had been reclaimed, and with it, a quiet reminder that humanity should never be measured by appearance alone.